genuinely want to talk about this whole like cortisol face thing going on around in the internet. The reason being is because part of it has like a little bit of truth to it, but the rest of it, like there's just so much more underneath it that like is worth understanding and just like worth knowing before you just like, you know, drop a bunch of money on these like powders or this like fancy little cocktail that you're gonna mix up, and just understanding like, okay, how does this all work in the body, and like what is this drink supposed to do, right? Because if some guru online says like, okay, drink this drink every single day and it'll magically decrease your cortisol and etc. etc. I mean, let's be real, okay? So cortisol is a stress hormone, okay? It is a hormone that gets produced from the stress in your body. But the thing with saying that is it is also an essential hormone, okay? So just like estrogen and progesterone and testosterone, it is an essential hormone to your body. All of your hormones, when balanced, they work in conjunction with each other, right? You can't function without any cortisol. You can't eliminate cortisol altogether and still function, because cortisol runs your blood sugar, it helps run your energy, and it also helps like run your inflammatory response. So when people say this term like cortisol face, okay, so this is kind of like what they mean in the sense of like, if you have a lot of cortisol in your body, so a lot of stress hormone that's causing a lot of inflammation, okay, that inflammation can then come across as puffy face, puffy body, puffy ankles, you know, it can almost look like water retention, right? And we're seeing it a lot because everything around us is so full of things that cause inflammatory markers, right? So it's not that those things are necessarily all bringing up your cortisol, because they're not, but it's like foods and the water we drink and just our environment and oxidative stress and all of that stuff is contributing to high inflammation in our bodies. And then that high inflammation is causing the puffiness and it's causing all of this stuff, right? So it isn't necessarily that the cortisol is the only thing doing that, right? So just to be like super, super transparent and super real, like these cocktails that are online, it's like, oh, here's like a coconut water salt, like whatever kind of mixture. There's so many different like little cocktails that people are saying that, oh, drink this or whatever. Well, if you look at like what each one of those ingredients and those ingredients do together, you know, you're more looking at like an electrolyte substance, right? And electrolytes are going to obviously help support different things in your body, your energy, things like that. But are they decreasing the cortisol, or are they decreasing the inflammation in your body? No, that's not what electrolytes are necessarily designed for, right? So it's all just a marketing gimmick, you know, and it's unfortunate because, you know, we will like kind of grab on to like what we think, like if we see our face in the morning, we think, oh my God, yes, my face is puffy. And this person says, well, your face is puffy because you have high cortisol. They're automatically going to assume, oh, I have high cortisol if I drink this drink, whatever. So let's break that down even a little bit further, right? So if we're looking at inflammation and we're looking at all the factors in life that like cause that inflammation, so we're looking at, you know, environment. So we're looking at obviously pollution and fumes and, you know, if you're in the Okanagan right now, smoke, right? Like the smoke right now is causing a lot of inflammation in people's bodies. And oxidative stress and things like that. And then you're looking at like free radicals and damaged cells from like overuse in the sun, like sun exposure, and just like all of the different things. There's so many different things. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of things every single day, right? Smoking, drinking, drugs, like all of these things that are adding to the oxidative stress in our body, which is then leading to inflammation, which is then also leading to a little bit higher cortisol levels too. So if you're looking at everything as a whole and you're looking at like, okay, so how do I lower the inflammation in my body, right? So first off, I want to go back to the cortisol thing, because cortisol, again, is a stress hormone. So if you do have high amounts of stress in your body, okay, and you think about like, okay, am I just going to like drink this little cocktail and it's going to like lower the stress in my body? Think about what your stress or what your response is tied to. It's tied to your nervous system, okay? So our nervous system is going to fully control our stress response. Okay, so we need cortisol. We've established that. We need some cortisol. But how do we actually get on a page where we don't have an overabundance of cortisol, which is then, you know, heightening some inflammation in our body even more than all the things around us are? So let's lean back into nervous system. Okay, so if you actually do have quote unquote cortisol face and your cortisol is just so through the roof that you are actually having that much more inflammation because of it, and then it's causing you to be puffy. Let's just say that's the only thing, which it is not, I promise you that. It is not the only thing that is leading to the puffiness in your body. But let's just say that was the case, right? Well, do we think that realistically a electrolyte type substance is going to go after your nervous system in a positive way to decrease that? Does that make any sense, right? So what actually does do that? Well, nervous system regulation, right? So I work with a lot of my clients on this. We talk like a lot of what I talk about with my one-to-ones and in my private community. We talk about nervous system, because nervous system is the root to almost everything. Everything in your outer reality, nervous system is the root to it. But even if you're just thinking about things like this, like cortisol, okay, well, if we figure out ways to lower our cortisol, and we're looking at nervous system, well, what do we have to do? We have to regulate our nervous system. So heighten, like unhealthy limits or amounts of cortisol comes from a dysregulated nervous system, okay? Dysregulation is very common. Like, I don't know the exact stat, I'm not gonna try to like quote that or anything, but a very high percentage of the human population, we operate from a dysregulated nervous system state most of the time. A lot of people actually haven't ever even experienced what regulation feels like to even know the difference. They've just, you know, that feeling of like just being in survival mode. Like, I feel like so many people can relate to that statement where it's just like, yeah, I just felt like I was in survival mode my whole life. Like, I don't even know what that like should feel like to not be in that, right? So if we're thinking about nervous system regulation, okay, how do we do that? When you're first in the journey of learning to regulate your nervous system, the number one thing is to like find your thing. So I call it like your nervous system tool, your regulatory tool, okay? So find your thing, or find 3 things, you know, one that you can do at work when you're like kind of tied up, busy, that just takes like 30 seconds or 90 seconds. And then one that you can do when you're kind of like outside of work, you have a little bit more free time. Maybe you can get away from the kids for a few moments, you know, take 5 or 10 minutes by yourself. And that kind of like bring you back into a state of calm, right? So if you're feeling any sort of energies like rushed or chaotic or stressed or like, you know, freaked out and all of these things, these are all very clear that you're in a dysregulated state, right? So we want to find those things that work for us. So for some people, it's like gratitude, right? So they just take 30 seconds, they stop, they just like think about like, okay, I need to get back into gratitude. You know, what am I grateful for at this moment? And they just think of one thing, they pull it into their body, they feel it, they drop back into the present. And then all of a sudden you're just like, you come back to after 30 seconds and you're like, okay, I feel good. Like, you know, for other people, it's, you know, putting on just like a quick little frequency, right? So there's tons of frequencies out there for nervous system calming. Some people really like that. If you are looking for one that like is a little bit more lengthy, sometimes it's, you know, going outside, going for a 15-minute walk, spending time in nature, grounding, putting your feet on the floor, all of these types of things, right? There is a million different ways. Some people it's journaling. Like there's so many different things that you can find, but find your thing. So that's like my number one thing that I always tell every single person I work with. We need to find your thing. We need to find your thing or your things that bring you back to calm, to present, because you can't make a decision or you can't operate like with a sane mind, with a sound mind from a dysregulated state, right? So even if you have to like come back and regulate like time and time again throughout the day, like when I was first learning regulation years ago, like it would be like 6 times a day that I would just have to like stop myself fully, you know, get into the present moment, feel that gratitude, come back out, do my like walk, do whatever I need to do my journaling, all of these kinds of things, until it just became like it was a part of, it's like a part of you and you don't even really notice that you have to like consciously do it. It's now just like subconscious, right? So when it comes to nervous system, that's your number one thing. And your nervous system is going to be tied directly to your cortisol. Your cortisol is going to be tied directly to your inflammation. And obviously inflammation is going to be tied to like everything that you surround yourself with, that you expose yourself to, all of these things. So long story short is this cortisol face thing is a little bit of a marketing tactic. Okay, let's not fall for this, because cortisol is bad, because it's not. Too much cortisol, yes, that can lead to inflammation in your body, which you don't want. So we definitely don't want an abundance of cortisol, but we do need cortisol to function every single day. So let's not try to fall into these gimmicks where it's like flush the cortisol out of your body. Like, no, you can never fully get rid of cortisol because you need it